Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Mario Bekes, Managing Director of Inside Intelligence Group. It was a true pleasure to be today on Evolvepreneur Podcast with John North. And in today's episode, we spoke about 3 F's: fear, fight, and freedom. Fear from loss of your financials, fight from and against fraud, and freedom from the risk. Thank you for tuning in, and thank you for listening.
Welcome to the Evolvepreneur Podcast Show. I'd like to introduce today to Mario Bekes, who's the Managing Director of Insight Intelligence, and he's an ex-military and diplomatic security intelligence services, so it's quite an interesting kind of resume there, so we'll dig into it. So welcome, Mario, to the show.
John, thank you very much, and thank you to all listeners of Evolvepreneur Podcast. I'm very thankful for being today with all of you and sharing my humble story and my life experience with all of you.
Cool. So I'm just going to dig into your resume a little bit, just so that people understand who we're talking to and why I should listen to you, kind of thing. So you're a security intelligence, a diplomatic insurance security intelligence services specialist and now best-selling author. Experiences continuous 1800 combat days, which I might come back to that. From a life in communism and a fight for democracy, an ambassador and activist for humanity. Mario's goal is to show you how to conduct a successful investigation in the workplace. So kind of very interesting kind of mix of things there, Mario. So what's the 1800 combat days? What's that mean?
Well, I'd like to introduce to the guests to bring up to speed in my background. So basically, I was born in communist Yugoslavia. That was not my choice, of course. My parents were those one who, made that happen. Growing up in communism, it is very difficult. It does create for certain events in life, prepare you for resilience in events of the poverty, because I lived in pure poverty. That being said, 1986, my parents decide to kick me out of the house. Why is that? Because they believe that I'm enough of age to look after myself, and plus they give all these stories, you're a bad boy, and you're nothing, you're never gonna be nothing. So on Christmas Eve 1986, I arrived at home, my parents kicked me out.
Wow.
Fortunately for me, I must say I was very afraid. I was afraid, John, because that was not very first time that my parents done this to me, but this time they're very, very serious, because only what they gave me was a school bag with the books. And I was fortunate enough that evening my grandfather was passing by, come out of the shadow, and took me under his wing. So what had happened, it was that my grandfather was the second in charge of Yugoslavian secret police. He was the second in command. Very respectful man. Everybody was afraid of him as well. But he knew that what's happened to me, it is not just a coincidence. So my grandfather told me, I'm going to put you on the right path, which meaning he was sending me military school when I was 14 years old. So he became my guardian. Moving forward, as a history can witness, 1991, the civil war broke out in Yugoslavia. Croatia declared independence. And then what happened that I need to choose what I'm going to do in my life. Again, by some destiny of fate, my parents, they ran away. So I was on my own, 18 years old, and I chose to go fighting for independence. I started in July 1981, and 1800 days I was in continuous combat readiness in small operations, big operations. However, as the war was nearing towards the end, my curiosity dropped me somewhere with, that expression, be careful what you wish for. And I was wishing to become the spy. So I ended up in military security intelligence services. And that led me, 98, to be transferred into Department of Foreign Affairs of Republic of Croatia into the department called Directorate 7, which was Foreign Intelligence, Security and Counterintelligence. And that's how I come in Australia. So 1800 combat days was, again, my choice to go to fight for democracy, independence, freedom. And as every naive young man, too much Rambo movies and you believe you're going to be one-man army and the war's going to last a couple of days. It turns into the 5 years continuous combat, literally, not just in Croatia. We have excursion in neighboring Bosnia and other places as well across Croatia. So it was very tense. It was very hard for the young man. I lost the hair after 1 year in the war. That was one of the toughest moments. And on that part, I learned to love the life. And again, be careful what you wish for. Because, John, I just want to bring short story. When the international society and the countries across the globe declared independence of Croatia, 15th of January 92, for some reason I was in trenches and it was very cold, it was 20 degrees below, it was snowing, very cold day in the middle of the winter in January. And suddenly we heard on news, everybody across the world, everybody declared independence for Croatia. And for some reason, there was a plane flying, very, very high. And prior to this, I saw commercial on TV because we have the like shipping containers dig into the ground, into the soil deep. So we use this to recuperate, relax, and eat a meal and sleep. And there was a TV, and on TV was that day commercial about McDonald's burgers in Ibiza. And can you imagine Ibiza, all the bikinis with the burgers? And I told everybody, you see that plane? One day I'm going to be on that plane. I'm going to go in a hot place, Ibiza, with all these girls' burgers.
Get out of there.
Yes, that's true. And what happened 7 years later, I was literally on a plane in November 98 to fly in Australia. So it's not very close like Ibiza, but Australia, it's a much more better place. And I said to myself, looks like that if you wish hard for something, it will happen. And, when you're young, you don't believe those things. But now from this distance, John, I can say, be careful what you wish for, because wishes really come true. So, yes.
And I think the danger with that too is that often what you want isn't necessarily the way it turns out, as you say. Like, you want to go one place. I mean, I used to work for a bank. And when I worked for the bank, what I discovered after being transferred a few times was, don't ask to go where you want to go, ask to go somewhere else, and then they'll transfer you to where you want to go. So
interesting.
It's almost bizarre that the universe will kind of decide for you that if you really want this, no, they're going to do something else with you. So you've almost got to like deflect it a bit. And yeah, guaranteed, like I just say, don't transfer me to, I want to go to Mackay, don't transfer me to Russell, they transfer me to right? They transfer me to Julia Creek, which is like the holistic.
I truly believe that people should dream and wish for things. I say, like, as a kid, I was always dreaming about, Nike sneakers, or, to have the things like in commercials, because in communism, John, what people they don't understand, the news has been very filtered. Every information coming inside the country was being monitored, but within country, of course, you had the narrative everybody was following. So in a very few occasions, I got in possession of some magazine from overseas, like not me, just like a 50 of us. I wanted this, I wanted that. So I said, like, I truly believe that dreams coming true. And if you wish hard and a lot, they will come true. I'm the example for that one, yes.
Yeah, and I think so. I mean, I think, obviously a lot of people in the world never experienced war before. And so I think it puts a very different perspective on life and what's important, suddenly, like I guess you look in Ukraine and suddenly, they just leave because it's not what they've got, their possessions aren't important anymore. It's survival that's important. So you kind of like, things get in perspective in that situation, don't they?
It is people love to talk about war like as if it's a movie on TV.
You didn't desensitized from it,
Yes,
yeah.
but war is, for some reason, I explain this in my book, if I can mention, John, in my Blood, Soccer, Soul, first of trilogy of my books, my personal experience, not about war as a tactician or general, but as a young man, what you're going through and how you survive. But something it is about war, John, and I can't explain. The war in Croatia broke out in the beginning of the summer, June. And suddenly, doesn't matter how much sun, green, and everything, suddenly everything's become gray, John. So the war is not just experience, like you fight against your enemy. But I always say the biggest casualties of the war, first is the truth. And secondly, are the people who don't fight as civilians. And I always saw those civilians, sitting in a cold, wet basements, waiting for the some good news. And my heart goes to Ukrainians because I know what they're going through. We didn't face the Russian army. We faced the Yugoslav People Army, who was at that stage third most powerful military in Europe. And, suddenly you don't have that luxury anymore to think about nothing else than to fight for survival and fight for what you love most. That's your country. And but in hindsight, John, I must say, war, it looks like adventure, but it's a pure suffering for everybody, for both sides, because I witnessed so many
consequences, right? That's the biggest problem.
Yeah. So it's like war. I always say war should be avoided at any cost, because after all, there's a big wound stays after the war. The family lost their loved ones, destroyed homes and livelihood and everything else. And I wish nobody goes in a war. But that being said, I know exactly what the Ukrainians are going through, and I truly believe they're gonna have the victory at the end. So
yeah, and I think that's the thing is it seems to me like they're winning the war in terms of attitude, if you want to be like that. It seems like I saw something where an article that said a lot of Russian soldiers were giving up, and they were taking and so a lot of these kids that didn't even want to be there are basically not even wanting to risk their lives. They're just giving up, thinking, well, if I give up, I'll get taken as a prisoner or what,
Look, the war can finish in three ways. Either invading force win the war, or the defenders win the war, or negotiations. There's no other excuse or the explanation. But in the meantime, everybody suffer.
Yeah.
And, being a Russian soldier right now, one thing, it's very similar like Yugoslavia, like Ukraine was a part of USSR for decades. And there's a lot of family relationships. There are a lot of friends from both sides.
It's fighting your family, isn't it, really? Yeah.
And it's difficult, but Ukrainians defending their home, that's a difference. And when you defend your home, John, in a business, in a life, what you love most, you're going to defend to the last. So
exactly, yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
And I remember I was kind of take it back a couple of steps in terms of when I was younger. I went to the toughest school in Queensland, when I was about 13 or 14, because I moved around a lot. So I was a new kid on the block, and new kid on the block always got picked on. So I had to learn how to fight. So I started boxing, and this guy jumped across my fence at home, and he was trying to bully me at school, and probably being reasonably successful at it. He jumps the fence, essentially, not a very big fence to us, my house, right? And I laid him out. I punched him, and he looked at me startled. I said, "Dude, there's one thing to try and bully me at school, but there's another thing to try and come on my property and try to have a go, right? That's taken it way too far, and the consequences of that." And I think that's the difference in most respects, is that person's going to fight much harder for what they believe in.
Because you have nothing to fall back. It's yours. You want to defend what's yours. And it's a given to us by birth, that instinct and to protect what you love most. And as I said, it's being invader, I know, again, through my experience, through 1800 combat days, doesn't matter how much enemy. Look, after some time, he was prevailing and he was start winning, and you can see disappointment in us. You can't stop them. But again, we always told ourselves, one more day we hold this ground, and eventually enemies stopped, because they realize the deeper they go, the more casualty they have. They're being hated by every side. And the most important thing is policing of the country like Ukraine.
Yes,
even Russia cannot do this. And that's the
be like another Afghanistan, really.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's going to be, yes. Yeah, John, absolutely. Yes, agree. As soon as the public knows in Russia what is the true casualties rate of the Russian troops, it will cause put the finances on side, put everything. But when people start losing loved ones over dispute, it's different there.
So I think and I always reckon that you got to think about business as war too. And I mean, not to degenerate the whole fact that you're getting shot at, but the reality in business, it's the same principle. I think what people forget in business is that nobody necessarily plays by the rules. And I've been through that where I went through a 7-year war with my own supplier. And I think what you've got to remember is that what they want isn't necessarily what you think they want. And so I think you look at Russia's scenario, I don't even think they know what they want, in terms of who they're sending soldiers, why they're fighting. But to know what you want and be focused about, how you're going to get it comes back to that kind of wishful thinking kind of scenario where you're thinking, I want to do this, but putting into the plans and saying, I'm willing to get it. I'm willing to do the extra work.
Yes.
I read an interesting book the other day from Grant Cardone, which I've been meaning to read for a while, called the 10X method, right?
Yes.
And he wrote something interesting. He said things take 10 times longer and 10 times cost 10 times more than you usually expect, right? And I think this whole thing with UK and Russia is the same principle. It's taken Russia a lot longer to do what they thought they were going to do easily.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So you go into business thinking the same thing, right? You think, I'm going to be able to do this. I'll have all these customers breaking down my door and stuff like that. And then suddenly there's crickets, right? And you realize that it's 10 times harder.
It is. It's like, people are underestimating things and Ukrainians had been underestimated.
Yeah.
Over top, yeah.
To be underestimated in business is a good thing to come from, because when they underestimate you, they don't expect you to do anything. And so I've always worked on the principle of that kind of scenario where be the underdog, be the underestimated person that suddenly comes across and does the job. Because the problem is when they know what you can do, sometimes in business it's dangerous because they can block you and stop you. But if they don't estimate you, then you've got that chance of surprise, right?
Yeah, look, it's business. It is a different type of warfare, because business is not just you delivering the services. You need to create the clients, and creating the clients, regardless how many companies are over there. I was under belief when I started my business in intelligence. I believe that everyone's gonna look for me, and the only reason I started my company in intelligence was at that stage. My son was diagnosed with epilepsy and other brain medical conditions. And there was a GFC, as you know, in 2009. And I started losing my marriage. My kids were sick. And I didn't saw the exit from all of this. And I was not depressed, but I was very sad, man. And I wanted any job, John. I want to be even the taxi driver, but there was no jobs. So I decided to apply my expertise, what I gained during my working experience, I would call, in intelligence field and investigative field. I was very grateful because my government spent tremendous amount of money sending me different schools, different academies to learn the skills they required for the position I was working. And my first advertising, I was believing if I open just some directory, you find on every corner, every coffee shop, local, that everyone's going to become my client. And I was disappointed that nobody want to hear from me, John. And that premise that everybody wants me, it is not true. So I decided to advertise myself, John, and I advising nobody to try this.
Don't try it at home, right?
Don't try it at home, please, people, because look, my job, it's private investigations. I started as a private investigator, and everybody has a perception of a private investigator. The guy in raincoat and dark and all these things. And so the only way I can market myself was to do marketing on my own. I didn't have money. So what I did, John, don't do this at your home. I printed hat, Sherlock Holmes hat with a pipe.
Right.
And do you need private investigator and my mobile phone? So I went in a local shopping center in Stanley Gardens. That was the first stop. They put it into the community notice board.
I got to tell you, that car park at Stanley Gardens is war in itself, right?
But for some reason, nobody called me first day. So I said to myself, let me step the game. So what I did, they called this, whatever, guerrilla marketing, whatever it is. Yep. I took 50 printouts and I walked every shopping center in Western Sydney, and I was doing the sticky tape in the toilets.
Yeah.
Cubicles, sticky tape.
Things you do, right?
But I wasn't. And I was being called by police station, and I said, like, how do you know? They said, like, what's your mobile number? I was like, I'm sorry, what I did. They said, like, look, nobody pressed the charges or nothing. That was like 12 years ago. But they said, like, you can't just stick in. They're complaining. I mean, it's like, okay, I didn't know this. And that was my very first phone call. Somebody saw on the toilet my number, and that's how I started the business. And then later on, grow into the corporate side of the building. So I say to people, rather listen this Evolvepreneur podcast. On this podcast, you can hear so many stories and very smart people with a real life experience who are sharing with you and me and John and everybody their business ideas, their successes, downfalls, obstacles. You're gonna learn. So don't print nothing. Don't go in the bottoms like me, because now it's funny now, but it wasn't funny then, because when the police calls you, say like, are you Mario? And you say, how do you know? Yes, this is your marketing material. So yes, it is.
Yes. Well, that's the biggest problem though. When you leave clues behind, right? It's not going to help you.
The funny thing is, like, 3 years later, one of the shopping center who reported me, and I spoke with the GM in the shopping center. We done some donations, and I said, like, I was that guy. He says to me, oh my God, Mario. I said, like, well, it's okay, because it's not your fault. It was my one. I was rushing in toilets and sticking to you need a PI, and because I didn't know, John, nothing better. I had no money, and I need to get out and be heard and seen.
Yeah. And I think at the end of the day, if you believe in something well enough and you're willing to do it, I mean, it's interesting what we're talking about at the moment, because we build a platform that's an all-in-one platform.
Yes.
And when I talk to people, they go, oh, well, why don't you just offer a piece of it? And I'm going, but now I'm just sacrificing my beliefs for money.
Yes.
Right? Because at the end of the day, I believe that an all-in-one platform will work for a business. It's not about breaking into little chunks and trying to sell it like everyone else. Right? And so I'm prepared to fight the war on this, because I believe in it. And I think that's the biggest thing when you're an entrepreneur. If you don't believe enough in your own stuff,
yes,
no one's ever going to buy it from you ever, because you don't have that belief that's going to pass on.
That is true. I truly believe when my clients come to me, they come to me for the 3 Fs. F number 1, it's a fear. When I say fear, that's a loss of their wealth, loss of their finances. Second F, it's a fight. So I fight for my clients against the fraud, theft, and all other corporate, criminal activities and whatever is damaging company reputation, espionage. And the third F is freedom. Freedom is from the risk, because we're taking risk. And when I come to my client and say, we're going to investigate this on your behalf, they minimize that risk. They have freedom that the case is going to be solved in best possible professional, fashionable manner, time and cost effective, and they have a freedom to conduct the rest of the work. And as you said in your example, why would you sell something what you're working hard and you believe in this? For me particularly, and I want to share this with the listeners, as you can hear it, English is not my first language. It's one of the few languages I know.
Don't worry, I'm still trying to struggle with it. So
yeah.
My son criticizes me all the time for my grammar, so there you go.
Oh, really? Okay. So I'll come back to this a little later. And I was being told my very first networking meeting by the person I know today, and they are our clients. He told me he needed a speech therapist. So John, I was a 38 years old man, and I cried after, as a listeners know, I was in a war, and I was man of the mysteries in diplomatic intelligence. But yet I was a 38 years old man, and one person crushed my dreams instantly.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was start doubting myself after some time and talking to very few people. I realized doesn't matter what I do, I'm never gonna sound like Australian. And it is the barrier. So I learned how to express myself. I'm still learning even today. And on that note, as you say, your son makes the fun of you. My son has he's a Aussie oi oi oi. And I'm very proud that my son is born in this beautiful country, because Australia, it is truly beautiful country. People, they don't know how lucky they are. And he always says to people around, when we come to see friends, he's like, it's easy for my dad to finish the master's because 5 people write for him essay. And, my friend says, what do you mean? He said, yeah, he do the scribble. Then I need to check, decipher his English. Then PA afterward, yes, exactly. And then he sends to 2 professors. And I said to Matteo, but they are my words. He says, yes, they are, but, everybody's checking for you. And I say, but I just improvise. And but as you say, John, and that's what I'm enjoying talking to you, because you believe in your product, and I truly believe that Evolvepreneur Podcast is a great platform for everybody to express themselves. And I know John North name for maybe last 10 years, and
we've been swinging around each other.
I like to share, yes. And I remember talking to John, 10 years ago, and I said, John, I'd like to publish the book. What I like about John North, and this is not paid advertising after all, John, you told me, Mario, I don't think so. This is the product for you, because, it's a cost involved in publishing book. And I was like, I said, pricing, you told me price. I said, John, you're right. This is not for me. And the truth it is, if you want to do something properly professional, and my father has expression, you are not rich enough to pay cheap stuff, because you're going to repeat all the time. You spend more money buying cheap stuff.
Yep.
So once when you want to do something, and again, come back, talk to John North, you're going to love this podcast. And
I think, and I think the thing is that we've always had the belief that if you're going to do it properly, you have to be well paid for it.
Yes.
And we have a conversation with people about exchange of energy.
Yes.
So in my belief, the money is an exchange of energy, right? So the money doesn't exist.
Yes.
Really, it doesn't really exist. It only exists because of people's confidence, right?
Yes.
And so if you're not confident in the money, then it's just a piece of paper. And
absolutely.
It's like it's an exchange of energy. So if you exchange that energy in a positive and fulfilling manner, then the other person is going to take the same energy and they're going to turn it into something. If you nickel and dime someone and try to cut corners and try to keep the cost down, then you end up with that energy passing through into the book and further on down the track.
Yes.
So I made the decision early on, because I used to do that. I used to drop the price. The early days, I think the best thing I ever say to an entrepreneur is never drop your price.
Yes.
Because it's a race to the bottom.
Yes.
And if you haven't got a price advantage, why would you even do that? But when I realised that I could charge more and do more, ultimately, because I had freedom, it meant that I didn't have to have as many customers, but I could produce a better result, which meant the other result at the other end got another customer.
You see, you said something very interesting in Robert Greene book, The War. And this writer, he's such a great writer. He wrote The War, The Power, The Seduction. And these books are very, 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 very concise and detailed books about actually what we're doing in life. And you say something very important. In that book, The War, he said, in life, it's come point in time if we're going to lose everything, can be taken away from us, our home, our car, our wealth. But in crisis, when everything's taken from us, and what guarantee our success, even we lose everything, wealth and materialistic things, it is our intelligence and knowledge. We got it accumulated through the years. And that's the reason why I love being here today with you. I know you for 10 years. I know we didn't spoke for 10 years, but, that's what that makes this podcast successful, because you could tell me, if you remember, doesn't matter, Mario, you're not a good guest for my podcast, but yet you say, here's opportunity. You couldn't fulfill your dreams then with me, but maybe now you can. And that's what makes you unique, John. That's what it is.
Yeah, and I think it everything comes at the right time. So Can we swing back a little bit to like the private investigator stuff, right?
Yes, please.
So who's your normal customer? Like, what in your mind, who's your perfect customer that you like to have in terms of that job? And is it a boundary thing? Like, is it you only do work in, say, Australia, or do you do overseas work? You know, how does it all come together?
For me, as I said, the work started. I was a private investigator, and I was fortunate enough to realize straight away that my knowledge, my experience in education, it's a little bit different than just to be PI and spy on somebody, I would say.
Yep.
So I ventured into corporate world where I realized very early that corporations do have the needs. For example, insurance companies, they're dealing with claims, fraudulent claims, unjustifiable claims, suspicious claims. And I don't want to go and itemizing, workers' compensation or third party or CTP. But when insurance company needs to investigate something, they believe that there's a need to establish the facts, because private investigating company, we're not police. So we have the different modus operandi. We are heavily regulated and legally bound and bind to do job properly. However, in the modus operandi of investigation can differ. How you're going to conduct the interview, what techniques you're going to apply of interviewing and questions, and it's a variety of things you apply in investigation. So I realized very early that I could apply some of my knowledge. Of course, I've been told so many times that will not work because people don't love to change things. I was fortunate enough, and as I like to share with our listeners, again, it is not a toilet. I was after some time. I wish that's in that instance. I wish I could run in toilet. So after some time, after pushing your obstacles, because in life, in all honesty, we all facing obstacles. You, me, on daily basis. Look at those people today, who are in a flood. A few days ago, they never dreamed they're gonna lose their homes and their properties. So we all have
change fast, right? Things can change fast.
Absolutely. We don't control 95% of things around us. It's all external inputs. Only what we control is our thoughts and our action. Now, that being said, I finally started getting hold on a corporate client. So I went for the lunch with one corporate client, and I did have $20 in my pocket. And I was thinking we're going to have a coffee. I have enough for the train, coffee, and come home. And I was very honest from the beginning. I told this gentleman, I would like to have opportunity on one case. If you believe that my results are not up to standards and you're not satisfied with my results, feel free to go in the public and say Mario Bekes, an inside intelligence, the worst company on the planet. And he was like, oof. He said, nobody speaks that way. The only reason why I was talking that way, because that was my energy, John. That was my passion. Yeah. And instead of selling the things, I just want a first case to break.
You've got skin in the game then too, right?
Correct. And he says to me, okay, Mario, but unfortunately for me, on that coffee was 6 of us, including me. And we had a lunch.
Oh, God, no.
And I was so naive, and I feel so terrible because I wasn't hungry. I want to have the water, but I had like a less than $15 because I paid the train ticket. So that was 2010, 2011. Yeah. And bill comes on table, and the clients and everybody was standing up, and they're going to send me the case. And I asked 50 times, you sure? Yes. And bill was there. The waiter was there, and the client looks at me and he says to me, okay, Mario, we see you there. And I was like, yeah. And he said, like, are you okay to cover this bill? I said, like, I don't want to say the name, but I said to him, Mr. X, I forgot my wallet in the car. And he looked at on the side on the table, right, on a chair next to it was like my, paperwork and the wallet. He said, like, I understand, Mario, not a problem. We're going to cover this lunch. And I said to him, it's like, are you sure you're going to send me case? Anyway, I admitted what's happened because I didn't have no money. So he appreciated my honesty. And he apologized for bringing a entire team for lunch with me.
Yeah, it's a bit rude, really.
And even today is my client, and I'm feeling embarrassed even today after so many years. So like what we're doing, it's I realized that opportunity that I can apply also some of my skills and knowledge and
Mm.
pass that knowledge through training and education of the clients and even some investigators working for my company. Because company is not me, companies are employees.
Mm.
And that's what makes company great. Every company, if you look yourself as a boss and I'm the greatest, no, you're not. Because results of your staff, peers, and employees represent company. So I ventured into an insurance company. I started working with them. So what we provide is factual investigations in workers' compensation claims. That's how we started.
Mm-hmm.
And that grew into different type of claims investigation management, internal theft, intellectual property theft. And as we grow, I hired a different profile of the people who are now into cybersecurity, and they're doing their type of business, which cybersecurity is not just who hack your computer and everything else, but as well it is to protect the data when you're traveling, which we're doing quite often. We're providing consultancy from industrial economic espionage protection, which is reality.
So more prevention than cure.
And that's correct, because I always come to that from that angle. I always say, like, when you investigate in something, and particularly if something happened on a plane, for example, or happened in a foreign country, it's very hard that you investigate. And as we all know, during the COVID, Earth becomes flat, literally flat. What I mean by that, we were contacted by the cable from point A to point B to you by internet cable. So that's what I mean, flat. And that removed a lot of safety features which you had in workplace and company. So we had a lot of the breaches of the data, a lot of identity theft, a lot of social engineering in terms of people being manipulated.
You remember that LinkedIn leak where they got hundreds and hundreds of millions of emails?
No, please share with me.
So there's an episode on a podcast I really like called Darknet Diaries. You should listen to it. Actually, you'd love it because it's all about this sort of stuff. It's really well done.
Okay. Okay. I'm gonna check this. I read it quite. Yes, please.
Yeah. So Darknet Diaries. I suggest anybody who's into this stuff, it explains it really well. But one of the episodes that talk about how that LinkedIn hack happened, and it happened because the guy's computer at home. So what they did is they found him on LinkedIn. They found he was an engineer. They hacked his home computer, which he happened to be running a website off. Yeah. And got logged into LinkedIn itself and got access to the database and got hundreds and hundreds of emails. And interesting enough, something like, I don't forget the exact number, but let's say 40% of the passwords were very weak.
Yes.
But there's a huge number of people's passwords was password.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. LinkedIn, right? Yeah. And even Trump's password was found, and I was thinking it was something like "Make America Great Again," right? The question was America ever great? But you know what I mean. So basically, he'd reused his password, and they actually got in and hacked Trump. But the reality was that whole thing happened because the security wasn't strong when the guy got home. That corporation had plenty of security, but the little weakness was the home computer, which, as you said, COVID's opened that thing up massively, and God knows what sort of breaches have happened since then.
When you look, in my past experience, and that's what I brought in my business. I was in the field of human intelligence, which require human-to-human interaction. That's a modus operandi, and
that's the weakest link, right? The humans are the weakest link.
As much as the strongest link, and always come back to the clients. I always told them, doesn't matter what passwords or firewalls you put. Every idea, every blueprint, every information comes to work, which is our, our storage, which is our brain, and information walks to the door, which you can't check, which is our brain. So humans representing the strongest link, but they're equally the weakest link. And that's what was happening during the COVID. A part of the claims, being non-genuine claims. And plus we had a lot of the around the data extortions and the data theft and the identity theft, because, when you work outside of the circle, you usually work environment, peers and boss and managers and everybody else, and you have a computer which is protected with some firewalls. It's very difficult now. Suddenly you're working from home, you engage in conversation with a stranger who is miles and miles away in other continent. How are you going to recover these things? You can't. So I venture to educate clients. So we, I have a couple of workshops about information security, no IT, but information is information, and hybrid warfare. So try to make this much more closer to the people so I can understand this. Yeah.
And I think that, the social engineering aspect of it, which is a lot of episodes on Darknet Doris talks about too, so the whole social engineering where you get people to do things they normally wouldn't do just to get in the front door, and that's a human interaction.
Yes.
I had a staff member the other day who approved, we've got quarantine, we quarantine emails, and he decides to approve this email, and we're going, dude, that was clearly a virus.
Yeah.
Like that you approved there, clearly a virus.
Yeah, because people that don't, John, you must, look, I was, I saw so many times, and doesn't matter how much sometimes it's just the fraction of a second you don't pay attention
which
to
is what
something.
cost you, right?
And emails are looking same. Like, I believe you inherit so many millions of the euros like me every day to some email. Hi, Sir Mario. I'm
Send
the
me your
lawyer
money.
I'm the lawyer for that prince who died and he left.
I can't believe anybody falls for that, to be honest with you, but they do apparently. It's like,
it's a money. I mean, people we need to give the credit to society. We are not all equally computer literate.
Yes.
And people that don't know these things. And there's some other jobs as well we're doing here in Australia and overseas. It's a surveillance. So surveillance is a program we're utilizing technical and mechanical means to obtain the footage or images of the person by marking very clearly not the breaching of any acts, legislations or laws in Australia or overseas. But that's one of the services. So that's a core of our businesses: factual investigation, surveillance investigation. Then we have the arm, which is training education, and consultancy arm, which is basically around industrial espionage, economic espionage. And that's what it is. And crime evolving every day, John. And I'm seeing the people educating fraudsters. And that's the reason why I select 3 apps, why the people come to me. It's a fight. I'm fighting for them against fraud. Fraudsters, only what they have, it's imagination, nothing else. And that's a crucial thing. They're using imagination. So they're exploring the loopholes they know they don't know, but they have imagination how to create a wealth for themselves. So through emails, through the social engineering, face-to-face and all these things. But how they know these loopholes? LinkedIn is one example. On LinkedIn, we can see millions of videos and articles, companies and individuals talking about protection against the fraud. So fraudster sits there, okay, so I can't do this. What I can do?
You're educating them, yes.
Yeah, we're educating them, and that's how the fraudsters learn.
Yeah.
And fraud is very hard to detect. Doesn't matter which practice you put. So you can do internal monitoring on employees, which is very, very minimal, but fraud comes from overseas. It's very unlikely that you're going to discover till it's too late. And I feel sorry for everybody who loses the money or become the victim of that scam. But that's what we try to assist our clients to educate them about trends in terms that this is how things be done. You should be aware of this, and this. So, yeah.
I think the thing is that, to me, and it's even when we went over our security and we looked at passwords, right? And the recycling of passwords, and people think, it doesn't matter if I use the same password in a different place. It's, they'll never get that password. But they know your email address, and now they think, we'll try this email address with another same password somewhere else. And before you know it, they've got in somewhere else. And I think people forget that when they think about passwords.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably the biggest single thing you see a lot of people do is their password security is so poor. And sometimes clients give us logins to things like Amazon and stuff to do stuff for them. And you look at their password and go, are you kidding me? You use the book name as your password? Yeah. It's like crazy. And it's like, that's a very simple step, right, that you can do to stop.
I tell you the one trick, a trick which people don't pay attention. Well, it's a trick. It's a trick why the people losing stuff and perpetrators know a lot about them. One thing is the social media. And people have to post all this stuff on social media, how rich they are, successful, what cars they're driving. But they make the step further by taking pictures of their homes, addresses. But there is a biggest danger, and that is our trash. And there's an expression, Johnny can help.
I got a dirty great shredder I use.
It's not like what do you say? One man trash is other man.
It's treasure.
Treasure. That's correct.
Yeah,
yes,
exactly.
In my previous life, when I said what I'm referring to previous life is that when I was working in government sector back my home in Croatia, we regularly visited garbage bins. It was not clean job, and I was a junior, so of course you're gonna do it. Be careful what you're putting in trash. Legality around the trash, it's very gray. If it's not protected by locks or barbed wire, electric fences, on your property, and it's on a street, it's everybody can access. But what's happening to the trash?
Right?
Yes,
mailbox,
yes,
it's accessible.
Yes, mailboxes are more protected by law. Your mailbox, because I can't cite exactly legislation or act, but your mailbox, it's your mailbox. Nobody can access your mailbox. However, perpetrators and fraudsters, of course, they're going to come. Of course,
the law. They already got about to break it, so what would they care?
That's correct. But the garbage is something what, particularly during the COVID, in corporations, they're doing. There was a famous case in 2000s, Oracle versus Microsoft, where Oracle hired some PI consulting company, and they approached it to the cleaner in Microsoft who was stealing the garbage, right? He was a cleaner in Microsoft, and there's entire articles there. People can read it, and of course, garbage cleaner was a little bit jealous. It's like, oh, I don't get enough money, and the story surfaced out. Of course, they've been in court and everything else, but that's one example of the two large companies. Now, when we talk about individuals, you never know how you become the target. And you become the target when you advertise publicly that you have everything. And somebody says like, well, let me see what that person have.
We can take.
That's correct. And they will go in a garbage bin. And garbage bins usually full of the invoices, receipts, bank statements.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny, interesting, because I look back when I was working for a bank, right?
Yeah.
Years and years ago now. I was still probably a young pup, like around 20-ish, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was working in the securities office, and we did a lot of security documentation, and and there was one thing I was typing up for a client to sign, and it was like an affidavit, like a stat deck.
Yeah.
And it didn't. I got about halfway through, and it was wrong, so I just scrunched it up and put it in, right?
Yeah.
Now, number one, obviously the bank, as I found out later, the bank's actual handling of those documents was bad.
Yeah.
But what happened was, I got a phone call about a week later. This affidavit or stat deck I was floating around someone's front yard.
Yeah.
So somehow it got out of the back of the truck, and guess whose name was on it? My name. So they knew it was me.
Ah, okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so a scary moment, like it's like it's inspired from it. But there's two breaks. Like I was the weak link there that I didn't dispose of it correctly. But then you look at the bank and you go, these are banking documents. Shouldn't these guys be, being very careful with these documents? Then just throw them in the back of the truck and let them float around the city.
Yeah. but you agree with me, like, regardless what you did, that document, it has been a garbage bin or not, those documents should be destroyed in a proper way.
Absolutely.
But there is a good saying in Australia I heard many, many years ago, who is watching the watchers? And when I was working in government service, one of my part of my jobs, which I apply in my business, is always to watching those who are supposed to watch everything. And the same goes in corporation business. It is not, we are unknown to anybody till we don't surface out and start flashing things. And I always find very unusual in Australia that people love to share those informations publicly. John, who's my client? I don't know. Just Vladimir Putin, like it's like, and they're like, oh, really?
Just won't be able to pay you, right?
So that was a good one. Yes, exactly. So you can't pay me now. But what I'm trying to say, this is what everything what you know should be kept. Like I always come back to that point. In a business, it's nobody's business to know your business. You always have employees and people want to know good portion of business, but they don't need to know intellectual property.
Yes,
that's meaning how you're thinking, who you're approaching, your meetings, and a bank statement, an account. And that creates in people that frictions and jealousy. In my business, I always report to my clients, when we finish investigation, check everything there, what's written, because it's legal document, which can be used in court of law, and try to implement policy procedures in your workplace based on what our findings are. It's not for free because you pay investigation, but at the end of the day, it's cost you less. And we found the reasons why this happened. And the clients are very, very, very grateful because they get report solving the problem.
Yep.
But after solving the problem, they can solve the problem, never happen again. And that's what I give pride in my business in. People working with me. So as I always say, this company exists not because of me. I started, I built it up, but business consists from the people who work for you, people who love to work with you. And as long as you treat them the way, I always come back to that, it's a paradigm. I always told myself, I'm never going to be like my bosses when I was working in military or in diplomacy. What I mean by that? My bosses, there was always been so hard and difficult for them to even shout you coffee. There's always this. And then you see the splashing government money on this and that. So I said to myself, if I can't give something small but effective, to put smile on the face of my employees, then I'm not a good boss. I'm exactly what the bosses are, the spies. And that's what I like about my business, because giving them my best honesty and always giving my employees the best possible recognition, it's my imperative. And the other side is the client who calls and say thank you. And we all have the faults. So I'm not without faults. Of course, I've done the many mistakes in business, but I will pick up the phone and I say excuse me, John, Mario from Insight, this job you gave us, we done this, and this, and this, and I apologize because we jeopardized this for you. And I said, however, you're here because of the freedom. We take a risk responsibility and we'll conduct again. And the client will accept this. But if I hide things and try to portray that we are so great, then it's a problem. So very proud, very happy what we achieved in past 10 years in this business. And I said, there's many competitors over there. I don't care what they're doing. Be honest with you, John. I'm fighting for my clients and I have no time to take care about my competitors because...
Generally speaking, 80% of what happens in your business is inside your business, not outside it anyway. So
you see, that's exactly what it is, because after all, the client gets the product or service, with a red ribbon, just metaphorically speaking, but they don't know, what was happened before that product was come there. But I know when I go to the client, I told them, you'll get what you ask to be done. And if we need to tailor it or alter the investigation to suit your needs, we do it, but we're going to do this way. So always open, transparent conversation and honesty. Either we conduct factual investigations in workers' compensation, theft, the car accidents, fire, that's a lot of happening lately as well, fire, the property damage and, fraud. I always say to client, it's honest conversation, how we can do better. Always. We never keep the same standards. We try to raise the standards together with the client, because even my client has other clients. So reflection of my work reflected their client perception about them.
Yeah, and I think that's the secret of business at the end of the day. Like if you can lie straight in bed.
Yes, that's great. Yes.
And not worry about worry about getting caught out on something you said.
Yeah.
I think that's a bad thing. So I really enjoy having you on the show. I'm sure we could talk for hours.
Yes, we could. We could break the record.
Yeah, I think you might have actually. I think you actually might have broken the record by 2 minutes. I'm not sure. There, I'll have to check.
Oh my God! Oh please, sorry.
We'll start a competition. I'll have to just talk longer on my podcast. Yes. And that's what's going to happen. So if someone wants to get in touch with you, I've got some websites here which we'll put up on the podcast as well, which is insideintelligence.com.au, right?
That's right, yes.
And mariobekes.com.au as well. That's as your personal page.
Yes.
So I think if someone's interested in that kind of thing, and also I think prevention is better than cure. So I think the worst thing they should probably do is look into their weaknesses now to see whether their passwords are strong, whether their files are safe, because I think those sort of things only happen, like you say, after the event, and then you're in trouble then because it's too late. Then the cat is out of the bag. You can't unpack that. So I think it's important to probably think about that a little bit more. So really enjoyed having you on the show, and maybe we can have you on the show again in the future. So thanks,
John.
Thanks, Mario.
Appreciate it very much. Thank you, Liz.